You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
That's not true. That's impossible.
You're listening to episode 89 of Making Tracks. I'm your host, Mark Newbold, and joining me today is a man who, if he was the sixth member of the Bad Batch, his code name would be Slapper. Mark, how you doing?
Slapper might be my code name, but my actual official destination is MM126 942 2187 1138 2164 1977 1980 1983.
I just abbreviated it to Slapper purely because you play the bass guitar. You see, that was my logic. It was actually it was a tip of the hat to your immense skills. How are you, mate?
I'm good, thanks, buddy. Just I almost took offence with that. I thought, hang on a sec, I'm not a slapper. Well, not anymore.
I was kind of hoping you would take offence. I mean, I'm a bit disappointed you didn't. That probably says more about you than it does about me.
Exactly. I think maybe I saw it coming. So there you go. How are you? How's your crazy week of Star Wars been?
Oh, dude, it's been May the 4th, hasn't it? So, yeah. And Revenge of the 5th. So it's been absolutely full on. It's been a good one. We've had a really good week on the site. Thank you to everybody who's visited Fantha Tracks this week because we've had a really good run at it this week. Obviously, tons for us to talk about. But weirdly, I don't feel like I've had a huge amount of stuff come in. All the stuff that came in was last week. There was some Hasbro bits came in. I've got High Republic issue 3 looking at me saying, review me. I'm really enjoying that title, by the way. Fantastic stuff. Other than that, not a huge amount. Have you had any stuff come through, Mark?
Yeah, I've had my monthly supply of comics come through, so I've got High Republic number 3 sat on the coffee table waiting for me to read it as well. So my Greedo figure, my 50th anniversary Black Series figure turned up, which has been ages in coming, and so did my Jawa. And the Jawa, I took one look at the package. It was basically a grey cardboard envelope, and it was so twisted and bent, I was just like, I'm just not even going to open it. I'm just going to just return it right now because it was completely shagged. It was so bad. I was just like, oh no. Where's the logic in putting a carded figure? I mean, obviously, I suppose put things in different perspective, and probably the Amazon pickers just kind of thought, oh, it's a toy, it's going to be taken out of its package because, why would you want to keep a figure on its packaging? So I sent my back, and now I think I've got to wait till the end of May to receive my Jawa, which is just a pain in the arse. But hey, there you go. But you kind of think if Amazon's going to have these kind of exclusives, then they should at least think about the packaging that we're going.
We're a funny old fandom, aren't we? We're a funny old fandom.
We are that. We are indeed. But hey, we are still the only fandom that really has a day, named after us, really, which I was kind of sat thinking the other day, I was thinking, I wonder what it's going to be like 50 or 100 years' time. Is there still going to be a Star Wars Day? Because you kind of think about stuff like this. Like you think of like Valentine's Day and how that all started, or Mother's Day, because those are basically very much like Hallmark kind of creations. And you kind of think, well, basically Star Wars is probably Star Wars Day, I should say, is probably the epitome of like a commercial Hallmark holiday. So it'd be interesting to see what happens, like get in the time machine and see what happens 100 years from now and see if people are celebrating Star Wars Day and how it's morphed into whatever it's going to be.
Well, we haven't got a time machine, but we can hop into a car, because if we had the chance to do that, we'd drive all the way up north, just north of Blackpool, to Cleveleys Promenade, where they've actually been filming Star Wars Andor this week. We've been covering as much as we can on the site. There's people on the ground, there's friends of ours who've been taking pictures, and there's been YouTubers who've been taking stuff as well. We've tried to compile as much as we can, and you'll find it in the show links for this episode. But of the stuff you've seen, Mark, has anything caught your eye? The one thing that really caught mine was the slushy machine that Susie Stelling took some pictures of that I thought was fantastic. So what have you seen that you thought, that looks pretty cool?
Well, I mean, the whole thing is, just kind of setting, isn't it? I mean, from what I understand, speaking to somebody who was on set, originally they were meant to be kind of shooting out, like, I think it was in the Bahamas or like wherever they shot Rogue One. But obviously because of pandemic...
Maldives.
Yeah, Maldives, that's it, thank you. Yeah, the Maldives. Obviously they can't do that because of a pandemic. So therefore, as you saw, we saw like Scarif troopers and palm trees. And I was kind of thinking, well, I know what you can do in the grade, but... trying to convert Blackpool into kind of a Maldives is going to be a big push. But, you know, it'd be interesting to see how it does look on the final product. I think also, you know, when I spoke to my good friend who does work on the set, I said, do you not find it a bit weird to be like in such a public environment? He said, well, the thing is, for normal films, no, because it's kind of part and parcel. But for Star Wars, yes. It's just like, you know, Star Wars is one of those things like with the High Wycombe set, it's kind of behind a secure kind of area and you can't get in very easily unless you've got a drone you can fly up 250 feet. So to then suddenly be on like a very open public environment probably must have been quite surreal for a lot of people. But I suppose at the end of the day, with more Star Wars shows being made here in the UK and everywhere else, this is just going to happen because ultimately they're going to need to use real world locations from time to time. They can't always rely on the volume to supply everything.
No, that's true. And you know, we did another piece on the site. Obviously, you've had all this stuff at Cleveleys, you had the stuff down at Little Marlow. And I think it was the Blackpool Gazette did a really good piece, actually, that not only was obviously proud that they'd filmed Andor just up the coast from Blackpool at Cleveleys, but also looking at other UK locations. And you don't realise, now I didn't really cotton on until you actually really broke it down, how many different places across the UK have actually had, and I'm not including Ireland, I'm not talking about Skellig or the coast there that they used for Last Jedi. Bits of the New Forest were used in Phantom Menace. Watford was Phantom Menace.
Puzzlewood and all that,
Puzzlewood for Force Awakens. You know, there's Greenham Common for Last Jedi and Force Awakens. There's just places all over the UK. The Lake District for Tarkadana. The amount of different planets that have been filmed here.
Yeah.
And I think, again, it's like you just said, you know, they can't get to the Maldives because of what's happening. They've got a beachfront. They've got that architecture that just looks like it needed Aurebesh slapping on it, and it would just look like a Star Wars location, which is exactly what they've done. Obviously, the Wizards at ILM, you know, how many ILMs are there now around the world? I think there's 5 different locations now.
Yeah.
ILM London probably working on it, and other teams can just make that beachfront, that very English sort of seaside location, look like an alien planet. So I'm really excited to see what they've done with it.
Yeah. Do you know what? I'm hoping that, you know, along the promenade, there's one of those wooden picture kind of cutouts where you stick your head through the hole. Like one of them's like the Emperor and the other one's Darth Vader flexing. I think that would be amazing. If you could imagine like Cassian and Katie sticking their heads through one of those. I think, do you know what? I might even pitch that. I might see if I can kind of get that suggested as a pickup if they need to go back there.
Do it.
But from what I understand, they're moving down to Devon for another shoot at a quarry.
Which feels very Doctor Who, doesn't it? Shooting in a quarry.
Yeah, that's kind of very like Sylvester McCoy kind of era, you know. And I don't really know Doctor Who. I only really know Sylvester McCoy, so you know that's my reference. But yeah, but again, because that's the thing. Like you take Takadana, and you know they go up to the lake distance. I mean, they basically were pretty much filming plates and stuff like that. Most of the live action stuff was done in Pinewood, you know, behind like the secure kind of fences and stuff. But I think having kind of plates and stuff like that being kind of shot, you could see that on any day of the week, and you probably wouldn't kind of think too much about it, because it's probably just a couple of people with a film camera. But then obviously when you've got, you know, the whole kind of like carnival that is, you know, the crew and catering and security and everything else, it suddenly will make it a big deal. So I just hope they come up to Stevenage so I can get some kind of walk-on part or something.
Hi, this is John Morton from The Empire Strikes Back, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
So Hasbro FanFest Tuesday came this week, funny enough, on May the 4th.
Well,
and Hasbro, yeah, I know, what are the odds? Never tell me the odds. And Hasbro did a live stream, but also put out images, gallery images of the figures that are coming out. Every licensee and their bantha was releasing stuff on May the 4th. Special offers galore. We put as much as we possibly could on Fantha Tracks. Some really nice looking stuff came out. Vintage collection first. They had the Off-World Jawa with his little hairy egg.
Yeah.
What do you make of that? I thought that looked fantastic.
That looks cool. And we get a Off-World Jawa with the Razor Crest, but it's a different one, isn't it? It's like an Off-World Jawa Elder with 2 eggs. Yeah. And for those who aren't getting a Razor Crest, means that they don't suddenly have to start paying like ridiculous prices for an Off-World Jawa. They can pick up a normal one for retail. So really liked that, and obviously really liked Echo, keeping in, I suppose, some kind of connection with the Bad Batch, although this is his more typical ARC Trooper armour, so with removable helmet and that, so that looks cool. And
it looks amazing, this fantastic looking figure.
Yeah, exactly. And I always get a bit of a kick out of seeing the Clone Wars in that kind of vintage packaging. Another easy win with a nice vintage Tebow.
Yeah, again, I love the work that they've done on the 3 3/4-inch Ewok figures on this round.
Yeah.
I think they look fantastic. The scale of them just looks really on point, really gorgeous. Boba Fett prototype edition figure, quite contentious, I think.
Yeah.
What do you make of it?
When we got the prototype Vader figure, was it 2 years ago? It was kind of a novelty and quite fun, but kind of again, more of these, I don't know, it's a bit Marmite, isn't it? I think, really, you either like them or you don't. I can see, at least from the artwork that Hasbro sent over to Fantrax, there's at least 3 different variations of the figure in different kind of colour schemes. As far as I'm aware, the one I ordered was just like the one displayed in the packaging, so I don't know if we're getting more later on or if they're just going to be variants that are just going to sneak in or something. It could end up being a right chase for completists.
It could. I mean, Boba Fett completists look like Matt Booker, obviously.
Yeah.
Those guys are going to have to get it. Anybody in the Boba Fett fan club, anybody in the Mando Mercs. It's a smart bit of marketing to get that out there. But yeah, that'll be fun trying to get all of that. On to the Black Series Gaming Greats continue with a 6-inch Flame Trooper figure from Jedi Fallen Order. I think that looks fantastic. It's definitely got Snow Trooper vibes, but that just looks awesome.
Yeah.
And then the Night Brother Warrior figure also from Fallen Order. What do you make of that? I thought it was Savage Press at first, caught me out.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well. But then I remembered that you do have these in the game, and there's a couple of them in that level that actually they kind of come out of nowhere. And I can remember playing it, and it actually made me properly jump out my seat a little bit. So we have a scary little buggers, but he looks cool with his kind of, I don't know what's that? It's like a mace or something he's kind of got, a weapon. But they're really kind of milking the more recent Star Wars games for Beast Gaming Greats releases. And I think we talked about this last week. It would be nice to see some more kind of legacy characters being released. Kyle Katarn, I think he hasn't been released since 1995, 96, I think, when he was part of the original Expanded Universe range. So that would be cool. It would be nice to see like a photorealistic version of him. But at the same time, I do enjoy the Gaming Greats range. So I will, in fact, I have already pre-ordered them. So we're all good.
On the subject of milking things a little bit, there's another Mandalorian helmet coming out, electronic helmet. I mean, how many of these are they going to release? It looks fantastic. It's the Death Watch Premium electronic helmet, and it does look fantastic. We've had numerous Boba Fett's. We've had, obviously, the Mandalorian himself, and it looks great. I'm not knocking it, and if you want to buy it, awesome. If you own these, you must be, at this point, it's like, are they going to do a prototype Boba Fett version of this? Am I going to get a pink one next week?
Yeah.
You got to wonder.
Well, that is a problem. I've got the prototype one. I've got a Boba Fett helmet. It's the Empire Strikes Back one, which, I wear with my 501st costume, so therefore I don't think I need to get any more than that. But there is something quite nice about this paint scheme. And this is the same thing, we kind of said this about the X-Wing pilot helmets, but, all you need to do is just do a repaint, and then you've got a new helmet.
Yeah.
You take the Red 5 Luke Skywalker one and you repaint it, you've got the wedge. And now I'm sure by the end of this year, they will release probably a Biggs helmet as well.
Good old Biggs.
Absolutely.
He needs more love.
I think so. Yeah, Biggs does not get enough love. Or, on the flip side, they could release some from the actual Rogue One series. So there's plenty of helmets that you only see in Rogue One. We got, what's-his-face's X-Wing being released later on in the year.
General Merrick.
So, that would probably be a prime candidate for a repaint for that. So, interestingly, from a costuming perspective, the Luke Skywalker Red 5 Black Series helmet is so popular. It's very easy and it's priced at a level that is very accessible for a lot of people. And in terms of detail, it's not that far off. But then, of course, you run the risk of, you walking around a Comic-Con and you're just going to see 20 or 30 Luke Skywalkers or pilots wearing the Luke Skywalker helmet design. And obviously the helmet designs are meant to be the one personalised aspect of that costume. So being able to have different helmet designs being produced fairly quickly means that it's just going to be a little bit more interesting and you've got that choice.
Black Series 6-inch Imperial Shock Trooper, rather, from the Bad Batch. That's coming out. Looks fantastic. Love that design. I think we first saw that at the end of Revenge of the Sith, didn't we?
Yes.
Also, a 6-inch Vice Admiral Rampart figure. So if you've watched The Bad Batch, which we'll talk about in a minute, he's the guy you see on the hologram in the second episode as well.
That's correct.
Finally, Vintage Collection, Lucasfilm First 50 Years, Death Star droid figure. I will be all over this because the very first figure I ever got was the Death Star droid, which looks fantastic. Detailing on that is awesome, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Those 50th anniversary 6-inch Black Series figures just look great. So I have mine pre-ordered, so hopefully that will arrive in mint condition and I won't have to send mine back.
Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
Vintage Collection, Lucasfilm First 50 Years, 3 3/4 Luke Skywalker Andor figure. Again, looks gorgeous. And also in the first 50 years, it got a Tusken Raider. That is the best looking Tusken Raider I think they've ever released.
Yeah.
So I think that looks amazing.
Agreed.
So clearly, Mark, you'll be buying all of these multiple times because, why wouldn't you?
Well, yeah, space allowing, I would, because then I'd open one up and keep one in a package. But as it is, I think I have got everything that I need pre-ordered, he says. Just running down my list. Well, as much as I could do that was released for pre-order already. Can't wait to see what else they release throughout the rest of the year, because we're still not even halfway through. So it's crazy to think how many figures we're going to actually have by the end of 2021.
Hi, this is Neil Scanman. You're listening to Panther Track.
May the toys be with you. It's travelled around the UK before. It's been in other cities and towns. January 2022, it lands in Lichfield, which selfishly for me is wonderful because Lichfield's about 15 minutes away. It's going at the hub at St Mary's, which is the old church in the middle of town around Market Street. So it's a great location. They've spent a buttload of money renovating it and changing it all. It used to be a coffee shop. Now it's almost like an art centre. It's great for the general public to see what Star Wars is all about, I think. That's where I think the heart of it lies.
Yeah.
It gets the word out there to other people who just know what Darth Vader is and know what R2-D2 is, and then they can actually see there's a lot more to sort of Star Wars fandom and the whole thing, inverted commas, than what they might expect. So because they're so local, Panther Tracks will be all over this. So come January 2022, expect content on Making Tracks, definitely content on Panther Tracks. Stay tuned. But the great news, may the source be with you, coming to Lichfield, January 2022.
Woohoo.
Hey man, it's me, Kevin Smith, Star Wars fan, Panther Tracks fan.
So the Dave Prowse memorabilia auction, which was running on May the 4th, ended up raising an incredible £400,000, with a good chunk of that going towards Alzheimer charities. I was on Radio Hereford and Worcestershire talking about it in the morning, and when we were speaking, the lady pointed out, there was, I don't know if you remember when we spoke about it last time, Mark, that there was the Mark Hamill photograph.
Yes,
that I think at the time was like 4,500. That ended up, I think, pre-auction, that was 7,500.
Wow.
It was just like insane numbers. So crazy numbers. We put a piece on the site about this initially. We also put a piece sort of wrapping it up, but also worth mentioning that the National Film and Sci-Fi Museum has purchased Dave's original Green Cross Code outfit. So when that opens in the summer, which I'm pretty sure we're all going to be heading towards because it looks fascinating, that we'll actually see that original Green Cross Code outfit. So will you be heading down to the National Sci-Fi Museum to have a look at that Dave Prowse outfit, that Green Cross Code outfit? Because it's kind of a part of a lot of people's childhood, isn't it?
No, because I'll be heading up. Because Milton Keynes is.
You will, won't you?
It's only an hour's drive north of me, but it's still going up into colder weather and all that. So I'll wrap up.
Good point.
It's fantastic, and the fact that the National Film and Sci-Fi Museum are going to display it, it's as important really in UK children's development as I think the Darth Vader outfit really. So it's cool to see that, and it's such a fantastic amount raised, which is just great because obviously as you say in the article, Matt, a portion is going to the Alzheimer's charities, so I'm sure they'll appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So great news that they raised so much money. Well done to everybody involved, and well done to the Sci-Fi Museum for getting a hold of that wonderful piece. Good day all round for everybody, I would say.
Fantatrax.
So over the coming weeks, we will be reviewing episodes of The Bad Batch on Panther Tracks, where you'll hear from the team and what they thought of it. But here on Making Tracks, it'll be me and Mark talking about the latest episode. Of course, this week we had two. May the 4th was Aftermath. May the 7th was Cut and Run. We'll talk about Cut and Run on the next episode. But now, Mr. Ballcaster, debut episode of Bad Batch, Aftermath. What did you make of it? First thoughts and impressions.
Fantastic. I was nice and surprised that it was like a feature-length episode, which is great. And I think it kind of needed it, to be fair. There was a lot going on in this episode, and obviously we've got to try and kind of set up these characters and the situation for the series going forward, but also we've got to come to a conclusion with Clone Wars and stuff like that. So I thought it was a really nice touch that they started in the Clone Wars, and it felt like almost an episode of the Clone Wars, really. The Tom Kane voiceover, which I think is probably going to be his last voiceover for at least a while. And we then see Order 66 happening through the most surprising of eyes. I wasn't expecting a Caleb Dune / Kanan Jarrus cameo in this episode, so that was interesting. Obviously, the big debate is going on about now how they've retconned Kanan, the last Padawan's comic. But that aside, it was a great start, and I think it's going to create some interesting dynamics between the group. Omega, I thought she was wonderful. The music that Kevin and his sons have composed sounded awesome and very much in keeping with Clone Wars and Star Wars, and I just thought generally it was just a great episode. How about you?
Absolutely the same. I was really impressed with it. It was essentially, at its heart, a Clone Wars episode, wasn't it? Tom Kane opening, gets straight into the action. The logo fizzling out into the Bad Batch logo was a nice little touch. It did frustrate me a little bit that the Caleb Doom, Depa Billaba moment was different in the comic than it is in the show. And it just says to me that I think Lucasfilm just got to the point where details like that mattered so much back in the day don't really matter now. They've took the soft option. Let's just take the path of least resistance and do what the creator wants to do.
Yeah.
And just say that it's all from a certain point of view.
The comic's set on a different planet entirely. Order 66 happens, I think, at night, pretty much around a campfire. I suppose in some respects, the essence of the Order 66 remains the same between the two.
Yeah.
And I suppose this is the risk of having a canon and a continuity that is jumping all over the place. If this was just a linear story and episode 9 went into, let's say, the Bad Batch, which went into Mandalorian, and it all ran one after another in a linear fashion, then you wouldn't have that. But because you've got these moments where it's like, well, no, obviously you can understand if this story, and especially the first one was kind of Dave Filoni was a lot more kind of heavily involved in, of course he's probably wants to have Order 66 that he's probably envisioned for Kanan. The irony is it kind of now kind of resets things a little bit, and we end up kind of having this tiered kind of canon again like we did before, you know? So,
exactly what they tried to get away from,
Yeah, I think it's inevitable, really, because when was this Kanan comic released? This would have been like
2015,
2016.
Yeah.
So it's like going to be so out of the scope of people's minds. I mean, obviously, you'd like to hope that the story group at least brought it to attention and kind of said, well, this is what's written already. But I suppose it comes back to the whole kind of thing. It's like, at the end of the day, George was the same. You know, if he wanted to retcon something that was written in an expanded universe and stuff, that's what he did. Because ultimately, the films were the most important thing. And I think in this day and age, obviously, the TV series are the most important thing.
True. But the difference being was that George always said the comics were their own thing, the books were their own thing, and the film and the TV was canon. I look back now and I think they made the mistake of saying everything going forward counts. Books, comics, everything counts.
They didn't need to do that.
No, it clearly doesn't. Even somebody with the clout of Filoni to come along and go, I want to change that. Somewhere down the line, somebody must have said to these creatives, it's happened. Yeah. You've got to give your version of this because this has happened. You can't just rewrite it and change it to suit what you want to do. It's happened. And clearly nobody ever says that. And so they've gone back and they've just redone it. So now a comic that was essentially canon comic now doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Because this is obviously going to stand over a comic. What happens if Spielberg says, I want to tell the story of Depa Billaba? Does that mean that the Bad Batch isn't canon? You know what I'm saying? There's got to be a stop point somewhere.
There's got to be a line.
That was my only frustration. You mentioned Amiga. I love that we've already got two versions of saying the same name after the conversation. We had the other Boba Fett, Boba, Han. I think she was fantastic. Michelle Ang's voice performance was wonderful, and the animation is so detailed. Every little nuance, you can see what she's thinking. I thought she was fantastic.
Every time you have a child in Star Wars, you run the risk of them basically being like the Wesley Crusher, or just being annoying and a know-it-all. She's switched on and she's engaging, but she's not so confident that she's going to get annoying, I think. And I think, it's interesting that, we're starting to compare her relationship with Hunter to maybe the Mandalorians and Grogu, and also her experiences as she develops, a bit like Rey's in some respects, when it comes to the experience in different environments. So it's interesting there. It felt like she had an empathy when she's talking to like Crosshair in the cell. She's only really, 5 years old, but because of the clone increased accelerated growth, she's 10, maybe 12, I think, at the oldest and stuff.
I've been thinking about this. I don't know how they're playing it because I'm thinking Omega's a little bit like Boba.
Oh, okay.
Because he grew at a regular pace, whereas all his batch brothers would have grown at an accelerated pace. And I think Omega's the same. I think she's growing at human speed, but they're growing at clone speed because she's their sister, basically, isn't she?
Yeah, yeah. And well, that's just it, because if she's considered the fifth Bad Batch, then you would think that she would have been bred, born, conceived, hatched, baked. I don't know what you want to refer to them as clones at the same kind of time. But obviously, the others are fully grown adults. So,
but I think it's a bit like Django saying, as part payment for the job that he did for being the donor, and the whole conversation he had with Dooku on the moon of Bogdan and all that sort of stuff. One of the things I want in payment, I want an unaltered regular clone to raise as my own, it's a clone of him, but the kid is raised at a regular speed, and he's the father of that kid and brings him up and passes on his knowledge and stuff. And we know all of this. You just got to wonder, as the show develops, this is the interesting element for me, because it's quite a linear A-Team style vibe, isn't it? I know it's not the A-Team, but it's got that vibe of, these guys are going to come in each week and they're going to deal with the situation. They're going to, as a unit, with Echo obviously as well, and they're a team that are going to make things work. And now she's the odd dynamic of, well, what's her purpose in life, literally, what's her story? How's she going to blossom? The fact they've put such a good voice actor behind it with this amazing animation, that the lighting and the animation's so lush. I think it's going to be fascinating.
I think so. She's obviously going to have an important role to play, and I think it's a role that we don't necessarily are aware of. And I think that's maybe, again, more to do with her position on Camino. That will be interesting to see, because, and I've forgotten her name, but the Camino who basically let, override the hang and let them escape. So it's like, it was an interesting kind of perspective, because at the end of the day, they've delivered all these clones, and then suddenly they've kind of had their business deal pulled out from under their feet, really. They've kind of got new management coming in the form of the Empire, and suddenly they're being dictated to in a way that they probably weren't by the Old Republic. And it's interesting because obviously we don't necessarily know how much people like Tarkin knew about Order 66, but the fact that he was there really like early doors, basically at the same time that Palpatine's making the speech to the Senate. But, they're being converted. So he is like the biggest opportunist, or he's obviously had some kind of like inside information.
That just said to me, though, that when Order 66 is happening, Palpatine sends Anakin to Mustafar to wipe out the rest of the Separatists, the Trade Federation, the Techno Union. He wipes all those guys out and he shuts all the droids off. At the same time, he sent Tarkin to Camino to close down the cloning of the clone army because they don't need it anymore. So you wonder what other characters in that realm he would have sent off to different places to do different things, because to me that just said, well, he sent Anakin to Mustafar, he sent Tarkin to Camino, there's other people who've been sent around to do different things. It just felt like it's tying off all the loose ends now. Like Tarkin says, we're going to have a conscription service now, we don't need these clones anymore. We know as a viewer, well, Order 66 happened, he doesn't need them anymore, they've served their purpose. He doesn't need to be beholden to a service like the Kaminoans can offer, because he's got it all now. Those soldiers are in place. He'll now conscribe. He'll use propaganda as his main weapon, which you see the start of that in episode 2 in Cut and Run. You're going to start seeing all these little tweaks that show the delineation between the Republic era and the Imperial era and the way they operate. That's what's lighting me up about this as much as anything.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark fanthatracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
The characters, the Bad Batch themselves, including Echo, D. Bradley Baker did an amazing job of vocally defining each of these characters. And as the show progresses, clearly you're going to see those personalities come to the fore. What did you make of it initially?
I thought it was really interesting how he's managed to capture slightly different aspects. I mean, I think with respects to Crosshair and Dick, those characterizations are probably a lot easier to pin down. But when you've got kind of Hunter, who is basically as close to a regular clone as I think, but yet he doesn't quite sound like Captain Rex or some of the other Regs that we saw in the Camino mess hall and stuff. And what I quite liked about Echo, actually, because obviously Echo's now, he was a regular clone. He's now, thrust in with these Bad Batch guys, which obviously it was his choice. He's still having to kind of reconcile the fact that he's now half man, half machine. He's a cyborg. I'm hoping, anyway, we're going to explore that a little bit, because there's surely got to be some frustrations from the lack of being able to physically do things that he once was able to do. His kind of mannerism has slightly changed from what we saw of him in the Clone Wars. By the end of the first episode, I was a little bit tired of Wrecker. Just by the end of the episode, just seemed to started to annoy me a little bit, because of he's so kind of gregarious and kind of, they juxtapose that to the fact that he's got that stuffed Tuca doll, and which is quite fun and cute. And he's clearly still got the mind of a child or like a young adolescent. But there's just something about, he was a little bit too full on. But I thought generally that they've really kind of made it easy to distinguish between all 5 of them. So, it's an astounding performance by D. Bradley Baker.
Married, like you said, to the kindness score, which was really fantastic. I'm hoping they get that out for download ASAP. because it's the entry point for a lot of people coming into Star Wars now, the Bad Batch.
Yeah.
A lot of fans, this will be their first experience with Star Wars, so get that music out there, get that into people's heads. I thought having Tarkin in there was a good touch as well. Setting it during the end of Revenge of the Sith, they're talking about General Grievous has gone to Utapau and all the other things that happened. I've got to wonder, going forward, whether or not we do see Vader come into it at some point. It feels like you will. The Emperor, they used Palpatine's speech from Revenge of the Sith, so Ian McDiarmid's voice is loud and clear. My head tells me he will be voicing Palpatine in this going forward. It just feels like it's set up for some, like Andor, I think, is set up to follow that character but tell you a lot more about the wider galaxy. Bad Batch could do the same. I don't think it's going to be so boots on the ground. It's boots on the ground because they're soldiers, but I think you're going to see a lot more scope, broad stuff, galactic stuff. I'm really looking forward to it.
We've already started to see that, just how quickly the Empire is moving. The sweeping changes and stuff, which really start to kind of come into effect in episode 2. I think it's got some really good potential to kind of, I think, lead us to places and see things that we haven't necessarily seen before. And I think it's going to give us, I think, a different perspective, not only on the clones, but also the Empire and life in the galaxy at that point in time.
Hi, this is Vanessa Marshall, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks.
Amazingly, for the third week in a row, we've got a listener's question.
Wow.
We've had a few come in, and I've picked this one because it's very topical, considering May the 4th saw the arrival of Star Wars Biomes and Star Wars Fly-Throughs. So we've had a question from Japan, from Yui Mizuno. Hope I've said your name right, Yui. Biomes, where do you want to see it explored next? From screen, books, comics, or games? And then in Fly-Through, similar question, what vehicles do you want to see? So obviously we had Hoth, we had Tatooine, we had...
I have the one from Chapter 4 of Mandalorian, but I can't remember.
Sorgan, wasn't it? Yeah. We went to Mustafar, and we went to Crate. So we've got 5 worlds in, 17, 18 minutes. Absolutely beautiful. So chilled out. They totally need to release these as screensavers, because I would just sit and stare at my computer and get no work done all day. And then Fly-Throughs, we did the Millennium Falcon, the Classic Falcon, Han Solo's Falcon, and Star Destroyer.
Yeah, First Order Star Destroyer.
What are the locations, First Order Star Destroyer, what other locations would you like to see, first off, in Biomes?
I would like to see Coruscant. I mean, the problem is with Star Wars, isn't it, that a lot of the environments are just a single environment. You go to Tatooine, you get desert, and then you go to Hoth and you get snow.
I'd like to see Coruscant because I just love the location, so I'd like to take but I'd like it to be a longer episode. I think Coruscant's, it's a city planet, so I'd like to go over Monument Plaza, go through Imperial Plaza, all the big
different
places
levels and stuff like that.
Jedi Temple and all the stuff I want to see. I'd love to see all of that. I would love to see Endor, and your head tells you, I want to be on a speeder bike. Biomes is much more leisurely than that, so I'd like to take a nice glide over some of the key Endor locations. Corellia from the start of Solo, I'd love to see that. The potential is vast. I mean, imagine literally just flying over Cloud City, looking down. Around the edges of the circle of the dome of Cloud City is just the clouds beneath, and you're just flying over the city. Just stuff like that. I think there's some tremendous potential to do some really gorgeous stuff. You could go back to Tatooine, go around Jabba's palace. It's almost locations more than planets, really.
I think so.
Fly through, I mean, obviously Mos Eisley, but also Mos Espa. You could see some of those locations. Anchorhead would be great. Mos Pelgo from The Mandalorian. Some great locations you could go to. Leisurely roll through Beggar's Canyon, places we saw from Phantom Menace. So there's things you could do there, I think, would be really incredible. I honestly hope they're doing fly over the surface of the Death Star, for goodness sake, the trench, and just see those kind of locations. The scope is fantastic. What other vehicles would you like to see above and beyond what we've seen already?
Yeah, see, that's a little bit trickier, because actually in some respects, those kind of fly through or walk throughs of the vehicles, you kind of need a vehicle of a certain size. So understandable, like First Order Star Destroyer. Maybe it might be a little bit too samey, but again, I suppose you could do the Death Star or something like that, or Starkiller Base if you wanted to be a little bit slightly different. Jedi Temple, maybe. Obviously, it's not a vehicle, but I'm thinking that's the kind of thing again where it's kind of like you could kind of cross over, really, couldn't you? Because it's kind of like it's
totally,
or even Imperial Senate, that kind of places. But ship wise, I mean, an 8080 Walker's not that big, is it? It's big, but I don't know. I mean,
fascinating to see the insides of it properly, though, wouldn't it? We saw a bit of it in Jedi, but it'd be fascinating to see.
Do you see some of it in like Jedi Fallen Order and stuff like that? Maybe one of those kind of massive dreadnoughts, one of those First Order dreadnoughts, the massive one that Snoke's on about. Can't remember its name.
Oh, the Supremacy.
That's for one. Yeah, Tantive 4, of course. That would.
Oh, that'd be amazing. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. What about you? If you got a list, you've probably got a list. You're probably going to say like Slave One and the Outrider and everything else.
Yeah, I had actually got Slave One. Slave One I would love to see, especially after seeing it in Mando with the interior sort of turning around. I think that'd be fascinating. I'd love to have a walk through Lando's Falcon from Solo. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah.
Never thought of the Outrider, but that would be fun as well. And also, you make a great point. Even though Fly-Throughs has launched with 2 vehicles, that doesn't necessarily mean that Fly-Throughs will always be vehicles.
Yeah.
It could be buildings, like you say. So a look through the Senate, a walk up the steps of the Jedi Temple like the 501st did in Revenge of the Sith and enter that way.
Yeah.
You know, that would be fascinating. Dagobah, I think, would be fascinating. Yoda's hut and the sort of surrounding area there, because there's all the creatures that McQuarrie designed that you could kind of see, and there's lots of other stuff there. Ben's hut on Tatooine, the homestead, the scope is phenomenal, because in Star Wars we've got so many locations and so many great vehicles. My first thought was I'd love to see the X-Wing up close, but it's a cockpit. It's a cockpit. So,
Jawa Sandcrawler, maybe the Katana as well. Jabba Sail Barge.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the scope is phenomenal. And so thank you again, Yui Mizuno from Japan, for the excellent question. I hope we've kind of answered it, but I think in terms of Star Wars, the further out we go now, there's so many things we could say. I really hope, and I'm assuming it was ILM that worked on this and put this together. I can only assume it was, but ILM or XLab or whoever's done it, just keep them coming. Keep them coming. It was fantastic.
I was wondering about that because I was thinking, I mean, the Falcon exterior kind of did look fairly clearly CGI. But then I was thinking, I wonder if this is like the sets, because obviously you had the Falcon set and then you had a First Order Star Destroyer.
Yeah.
Those are the kind of sets up, you know, they've had around really recently.
Yeah.
I wonder if this is something that's kind of come about from some kind of pet project. They've had this footage and they thought, oh, you know what we could do? We could actually join all this stuff up or something. I mean, I don't know. I could be wrong. It could all be CGI. And if it is, well, then I stand corrected because it looked amazing. So
no, it's a good point. You know, if we get a Razor Crest, because we know that they've built that from, you know, pixel to pixel, you know.
Yeah.
If we get a Razor Crest and we're having to walk around that ship, anything like that would be fantastic.
I mean, I tell you what it slightly reminds me of. Obviously, it's not user-led, but it did remind me of Captain's Chair, the Star Trek kind of software package.
I used to love that.
Yeah, where you had QuickTime 360, which meant that you could look around and, you know, just walk at your own kind of leisure around the bridges and out of some of the more famous Starfleet vehicles. So that would be something cool, and that is prime XLab material, isn't it, really? You know, just being able to just mooch around. I mean, you could do that on any vehicle, and even, you know, you could kind of link the two by, you could actually select, let's say, an X-Wing, and you're in the cockpit, and then you go, right, I'm going to fly through and around Dagobah or Coruscant. You know, you're linking the two together.
It'd be awesome. More, please.
So, okay, what about you guys then who are listening to Making Tracks today? Is there anything that we've missed? Is there any environment or a vehicle that you're screaming out to see in either Biomes or one of the Disney fly-throughs? If you want to kind of let us know, we'd be really interested to hear what you've got to say. And also, again, your thoughts on the Bad Batch. So, Mark, if people want to get in touch, how can they do it?
Well, there is a way. If you want to be part of the action and stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news, visit fanthatracks.com or check out the free Panther Tracks app through the App Store to follow us on your mobile device. Your frees get better every week. You can reach out to us and send in those listeners' questions by emailing radio@panthertracks.com. So like Mark said, what other biomes do you want to see? What other fly-throughs do you want to see? What other questions do you want us to tackle? Send them in and we will go through them and we will get to everything. Comment, like and share on any of our social media feeds at Panther Tracks, and be sure to subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one please, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Semple for composing the Panther Tracks intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. This episode 89, first of 2 this week. We're back on Thursday with episode 90. Mark, it's been fun.
It has. I can't wait for the next episode. And everybody else, remember, you stay safe, take care, have a vaccine, wear a mask, may the force be with you.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's another episode of Making Tracks.